The cleverest of all, in my opinion, is the man who calls himself a fool at least once a month. In the book The Idiot by Dostoevsky. Every day I try to learn something new, something I didn't know. And every day I try to be motivated by other people into pursuing my own dream and what I want to accomplish. So that's why we have this first podcast is we try to learn from people, from game changers who are out there striving to be the best they can be and changing the world one day at a time. This following conversation was with Michael Ivanov, a game changing motivational speaker, best selling author, and a personal friend. Michael wrote 4 books, with the latest one, The Servant with One Talent. More information about Michael will be in the description of this video. Here was our conversation. You'll spend the rest of your days knowing that you didn't pursue your personal legend, and now it's too late. You must understand that love never keeps a man from pursuing his personal legend. If he abandons that pursuit, it's because it was never true love. Love that speaks the language of the world. The Alchemist. So, my first question to you, Michael, is what would you say is your personal legend?
A personal legend, man. That's everything that I'm doing right now. I'm lucky enough to be able to live it. Just recently, kind of fully stepped into it, full time. But it's writing and speaking. It's something that I was inspired to do uh, a lot longer than what I've been doing it. I was actually kind of I share my story pretty often, but I was sitting in my cubicle at my old job, and I was doing something that I was not passionate about. I was doing something that I was not had no interest in. I wasn't using my own gifts, skills, talents, and anything like that. And I always felt like I had more to offer to the world. And so I picked up a book, which I love that quote that you mentioned. I love The Alchemist, one of my favorite books. It's actually a book that I model my writing after because I love the simplicity of it. I love the pursuit of dreams and everything that he talks about. But for me, it was a book that really got me thinking about my life, where I was headed, what I was doing with my time. Made me realize that I was where I was because of certain choices and decisions that I made, that I was living with no purpose. Because I never spent too much time thinking about purpose. I kind of just did what everyone told me to do: go to school, get a job, do something safe, do something that's going to keep you out of the rain. Don't work with your back, that kind of a thing. And so I kind of just did what everyone told me to do. And so I ended up in that job, but all of a sudden I was depressed and miserable. And so my personal legend came from a book that inspired me to want to write and to want to speak in the same way that the author was doing, the same way that the author had an impact on me. It was Augmendino, and the book was called A Better Way to Live. And in that same way that he impacted me and really got me thinking about my life, I started thinking, like, man, what if I could do that for somebody else? Like, what if I could write something? What if I could get up on stage and speak? Because he was also a motivational speaker. And so I thought, like, that would be a life of purpose. And so I was so far from that because I was in that job doing IT work. And all of a sudden I had this dream to write and speak. And so that's that to me, that like I'm stepping into it and I'm doing it and I'm working on it. But that is my personal legend. It's something that I'm going to continue to grow, continue to get better at, and something I see myself doing for the rest of my life. So.
Yeah, and you're also impacting so many lives as well, too.
Appreciate that.
With that, and I don't know,
Absolutely.
because with all the public speaking and you're an author of 4 books. I feel like, in a way, tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me if I'm absolutely way out of my depth here, but I feel like you're the old king in The Alchemist.
Yeah. I appreciate that, man.
You're equipping everyone on their journey as they go out, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, if you like in all 4 of my books, you'll see a common theme. There is like that kind of from The Alchemist. There's the king is kind of like the mentor. There's that same kind of style in all of my books, and it's a fun way to write because you kind of get to be the mentee and the mentor. It's almost like you're having a dialogue with yourself. All of my books have that kind of mentor figure, and so it's like when I'm writing it, it's almost like I'm having a conversation with myself. I get to mention or talk about my fears, then I get to speak to that and in response to that, and it kind of creates that. So yeah, it's a fun way to write. But
So how did you get into just that in general? How did you choose public speaking? I know you grew up in a big family. You grew up with 7 brothers and how many sisters?
5 sisters.
5.
Yeah. 13 kids, man. Yeah. Every time I mention that when I'm speaking, I always see people's jaw drop, man.
Did you ever feel like you had to earn your parents' validation in such a competitive environment?
um, not like, not that I've noticed, maybe in some subconscious way, maybe because I was also child number 6, so I was right in the
Okay.
middle. So I didn't get the extra attention that the older kids get, or the or the younger kids. So, but yeah, I wouldn't say vying for, or from the parents, but in between each other, you kind of do have to learn how to make yourself
Yeah.
heard. You do have to learn how to
Yeah.
fight for yourself, that kind of a thing. So yeah, I guess you could say in a little bit.
So, yeah, and you went into IT. How did that happen? Is it just something you're like, yeah, I'll just try this, or you were really
Yeah.
more passionate about that
No, no,
at
no,
one point?
no passion at all in that, man. That it literally was like that. It was like, you know, my I was kind of more interested in just spending time with my friends and just hanging out when I
Hmm.
was still in high school. And it was kind of like something my dad was like, go to school, go to college, like start thinking about your future, which he was trying to push me to really start thinking about my life. And so for me, it was just kind of like, well, I got to pick something. And I heard the IT industry is gonna be pretty good, or is pretty good, and so I just kind of picked that. Now, there's fun parts of IT that we still, even after I left that job, we started our own business with my younger brothers, and it was actually the fun part of IT, where it was like we were installing Wi-Fi systems, that kind of a thing. But in that job that really got me to start thinking about my life, I was just like pushing paper. We were writing code for a really small printing company, and it was
Hmm.
just not something I enjoyed doing. It was high pressure. I felt completely out of place. I lacked in a lot of skills and knowledge that I needed for that, and so I was constantly showing up to work with this feeling like I'm not enough, like with this feeling
Hmm.
like I'm always behind. I'm dumber than everyone else here. Like, and it's only a matter of time until they're going to discover that. So, but it was a blessing in disguise, because that's what forced. That was like that pressure that forced me to really start thinking about, okay, like you can't just go get another job, because if you just go to another job in another company, like what if you start feeling this way again after a
Hmm.
couple months or a couple years? And so it really made me think, like, all right, like what does Michael Ivanov have to offer to the world? Like, what can I do that I can earn an income with, but at the same time I can impact people. I can do for other people what Augmendino, this author, and various speakers that inspired me, that they did for me. How do I do that for other people? And so that really forced me to think.
So you were in a rut. Let's just call it. You said you were depressed in a rut, kind of thinking, "What's my purpose in life?" What made you look at speakers? I mean, an average person just Google's, "Hey, feeling sad. What should I do?"
Yeah.
Hey, work out. Go learn a new
Yeah.
skill. What
Yeah.
made you like, "Hey, I'm going to check out authors," because that's not something an average person would do.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So around that time, we got invited into a multi-level marketing company. So I believe, I forgot what the company was.
Probably Amway.
But so what we were doing is like, it's like, multi-level marketing. You know what that is? Yeah.
Amway,
Yeah. So,
like
like direct.
Amway. Yeah.
Yeah. It was that kind of a company. It wasn't Amway, but yeah, it didn't work out for us, man. It did not work out for all. No success in that at all. But what the cool thing about that, joining that and being around the people, was they do conferences and they heavily push personal development, because you have to be self-motivated, right? You're your own, you're pushing product, you're selling, you're trying to build a network. And so they heavily push personal development. And so you'd go to conferences and there'd be motivational speakers there. They would be talking about different books and success books and all these things that and because they pushed that, that's what got me into reading, and that's what pushed me towards that book that I eventually read. And
Mm.
Augmendino, he wrote books similar to The Alchemist, where it's
Mm.
fiction stories but with like life principles. There's more to it than just a story. And so yeah, the way he wrote, and because I learned that he was a motivational speaker, in one of his books, he wrote very few nonfiction books, but A Better Way to Live, the book that I mentioned, in that book, he mentioned that he was, got picked up by a taxi cab, and the cab was dropping him off to go to go speak at a conference, and the cab driver recognized him, and he's like, "Oh, you changed my life," and like that kind of a thing. And he was like, I don't know, I would say 80 years old probably at the time already, and he was still speaking. He was still, and I was like, man, like that's a life of like purpose, man. Like you're impacting people. You're not only using your imagination, your creativity, you're putting yourself out there. You're doing something so unique, which was important to me. I wanted to do something unique. I didn't want to just do, what people in our community, Russian, Ukrainian, Eastern European, do a lot of construction, a lot of this kind of stuff. Nothing wrong with it. I just didn't want to do it. I wanted to do something unique. And I was like, man, that's like the perfect combination right there. He's impacting people. He's like, when I read his book, he'd passed away years before that. And I'm like, man, like that's impact. Like that's leaving a legacy. And so that's what kind of pushed me into sparking the idea of writing, speaking, and how to get into that.
Were you married at that time?
No, I wasn't. No, I wasn't.
So, but you I think you mentioned, I think, once that you were dating, right? You're like,
yeah.
Your wife was kind of in the picture.
She was already in the picture. Yeah, I was dating my wife. Yeah, my wife and I've been dating for a long time, so she was in the picture. Before I got into speaking, we got married. But so it was after my first book, we got married, and then we got into speaking, and so she's been helping me with that big time.
So how did that work out? How did that conversation work out? I mean, I know, an average person, before you get married, you have to have a solid job, right? You have to have some income, you have to you have to have a more of a stable life. You come to your girlfriend, fiance at that time, and tell her, hey, I am going to be doing this and potentially not receive a paycheck for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
How did that conversation go?
So the conversation went fantastic, man, because I think we were both really naive, and it's like, and I actually teach this a lot of times to people. I say, like, when you're starting out on pursuing a big dream, something that's extraordinary, something that's not, that's the path is not really clear. It hasn't really exactly been blazed for you. You kind of have to have a two-pronged approach. Like, one, you have to you have to commit to it. You have to be like, hey, this is something I'm going to follow through. Even if I put out this book, I publish it, and it doesn't blow up, it doesn't succeed. Like, I'm going to keep marketing it. I'm going to keep working on it. I'm going to figure out how to market it. And at the same time, you also have to have that kind of like that childlike faith where it's like, what if it does? And so, because if you don't have that hope that it could just happen for you overnight, the overnight success, like if you don't have that hope that it could happen, then it's really hard to get up in the morning and write when it gets really hard to write, when you're not feeling motivated, when you're not feeling inspired. It's really hard to do that. It's really hard to stay motivated. And so you kind of have to have that childlike faith and hope that, you will succeed faster than you think, but at the same time, commit to the long-term process. And I think because we had that like hope that it was going to succeed immediately, we were kind of both naive, and we kept, she bought into it, very quickly. It's like, yeah, like, we'll push this book, we'll sell the book.
And you said you're not a good salesman. You convinced her.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm so glad that both of us didn't know how long it was going to take. But yeah, it worked out. Like, I mean, she's down for everything. She's down to, for richer or for poor, like they say, that we say in our vows. So I was definitely blessed in that.
That's awesome. So what you're telling me is when you were in a rut, you were exposed to an opportunity to, hey, somebody inspired you, like, hey, change your life. Mm-hmm. And what you did to change your life, in a way, your first process was to take a risk, to put your future in jeopardy, right?
Absolutely.
So you have to not be comfortable for where you are. So you can't be like, oh, I'll continue, because you weren't like, hey, I am, I'm going to work full time and kind of start doing this on the side and kind of see where it goes, because I'm not sure, You were like, hey, I'll focus on this 100, like 90%, maybe do something on the side, 10%, but this is my main focus. So you put your entire future basically in jeopardy. Like, how it probably felt scary.
Yeah, it's absolutely terrifying, man. But and you did mention, doing something on the side. I didn't just leave that job and then step into, trying to write and speak. We did start, like I mentioned, we started a company with my brothers. And so we kind of used that as, to pay the bills, though, even though I took a massive pay cut, leaving the job. but I was happy to do it because now I was on my own time. I was on my own schedule. I was in control of my hours and my time. And so we were doing that, the side IT business as well. But yeah, you have like, it's definitely scary because you're putting yourself out there. It's like you're stepping out and you're dedicated to it, but it's just like, yeah, what if this doesn't happen? What if this is just like some pie in the sky dream and it's only a matter of time till reality is going to hit and I'm going to have to be real with myself and I'm going to have to walk away. And it's going to be the most embarrassing thing because now everyone on social media, all my friends, my circle of influence, people know that I'm doing this thing. So now it's like, I better see it through. There's also some of that external motivation, which helps. If you can get any kind of competitive edge, anything to kind of put a fire under your butt, man, it works. Any kind of, I use all sorts of motivation, anything I can get, whether it's negativity, whether it's trying to support family, that kind of a thing. It's any kind of motivation is welcome. So yeah, it's definitely, there's a risk there. It's scary. You're putting yourself out there. But there's no growth if you don't do that. There's no growth if you don't take a risk. If you don't if you just transition from comfort to comfort to comfort, and the bills are always comfortably paid, like there's going to be very little growth in your life. It's very hard to grow, and the best way to grow is like to put yourself out there, to put yourself into new environments, new circles of influence, new places that you haven't been before, because now you're forced to step into that. You're forced to grow into that.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. What is motivation? You keep saying motivation. I was motivated. What is motivation?
Motivation, man, I'd say
I feel like it's a very unique thing because it's maybe different for everyone, but it's very unique. So I'm really curious to see what you say.
Yeah. So motivation in and of itself is just a feeling, right? It's like you got an idea, you sat down with a friend, you over a cup of coffee, and you were sparked, you got an idea, something ignited. You're like, man, all right, I'm going to change my life. I'm going to do this ththing. Or you heard a speaker or you read a book and you're like, man, I'm inspired. Like, I'm going to change my life. I'm going to do something. And what usually happens is like you have that feeling, you have the, the adrenaline, the excitement, like you have the actual feeling, the physical, biological feeling in your body of excitement. But what happens after a couple hours? That starts to fade away. It starts to, feeling goes away. And the only thing left now is to take action. The only thing left now is to stand by what you said as a commitment. So to me, motivation is a commitment to my dream. From the very beginning, I wrote in my journal, I still have it, to this day in this old journal that I wrote, you were destined to do great things. Never forget that. And it was a note to myself because I knew that I was going to get to points where I was going to feel like quitting. I was going to get to points where I'd start compromising. I'd be like, yeah, maybe this wasn't for me. Maybe I misread what my purpose was. Maybe I misread what, God intended me to do. And you start to kind of, you start to compromise a little bit, and you start to kind of, weasel your way out of it, the minute it gets hard. And so I wrote that for myself as a reminder, like, hey, remember that dream, remember why you started, remember what that original promise was, remember what that original spark, that thing that made you feel alive, because it was that moment for me in that cubicle after I read that book. It was like I was coming into work like a zombie, and then it was like the next day after reading that book, it was like I was a different person. I was doing the same job, I was in the same place, still stuck in that same environment, but it was like I was like alive again, and I knew that there was a light at the end of the tunnel. I knew that what I was doing at that time, even though I didn't enjoy it, it was just a stepping stone to where I was headed, and it was just like that, just that quick mindset shift. And so for me, that's motivation. It's always remembering what that end goal is, always remembering where it is that you're headed. And because you're not going to feel motivated. You're not going to feel excited all the time. You're not going to, like, life is going to punch you in the face. Like it really will. There's going to be moments you're just like, man, like, is this going to happen for me? Was this a stupid decision? Was this dumb to even start pursuing this thing? And in those moments, it's like, why did I start? Where am I headed? What was the original thing? And the minute I start to think about that, I get those feelings again, and I'm like, I'm back on track, man. I'm ready to go.
See, I think you're a special case. You're a very special case. An average person, an average person. I mean, you wake up in the morning, you're like, hey, this is my mission. This is what I have to do. Yeah, I'm gonna put that out. I'm gonna do this. Maybe I wanted to do this 7 days a week. I'm gonna try to do this. 3 days a week. And you would kind of put that out, even though like rereading that's powerful, I guess. You reread that to, get your mind right.
Yeah.
What would you advise to someone who has a goal, has a mission, but just has a hard time kind of getting himself up again, or her, saying, "Hey, I don't feel like it today. Like, Michael, I'm sorry, I'm tired. I don't feel like it. Like, what can I do?"
So that's a little bit different. You might be talking about something that was just like it's more of a discipline. It's kind of like, I got to get up every single day. I promised myself the goal was to work out 7 days a week. So that's a little bit different than the big dream, right? Because the big dream is like, it's like that thing that you're clinging onto, you're holding on to. Working out 7 days a week, that's a discipline. Like, that's not a big dream. Like, that's not like,
Well, it's part of a big dream, right? You would say, "Hey, I want to lose 100 pounds. I want pounds. So this is why I want to work out every day."
It is, and I guess in the same way, there's still a discipline factor, even for me pursuing the big dream of writing and speaking. You still have to break it down to the daily disciplines too, because it's like, I have the big dream of speaking. What can I do today to get better? What can I do today to find more clients? What can I do today to to connect with more conferences, that kind of thing. So there is disciplines, and I think it comes down to habits, because like I said, you're not going to feel motivated. You're not going to be inspired every day to get up and go work out in order to lose 100 pounds. But if you break it up into manageable chunks, and that's for me, it's like I have a whiteboard, right here, a couple of feet from me to my right. I have this whiteboard, and it's like every day I do this, send this many emails today, spend an hour on writing, go for a walk, do that workout. And I have my daily tasks. So it becomes something I break down, on a daily basis. So it makes it manageable, and it's not something that I have to like get up and like push myself. It's like, okay, do that. And it just becomes like a completing the task kind of a thing. But if you're struggling with that, if you committed, like, hey, I'm going to do workout 7 days a week, and now you start compromising, in those moments, I would say, try to remind yourself, whether it's put up a picture of somebody, a body that you want your body to look like, something, so you see it every day. So it's kind of like, oh yeah, I'm about to deal with this pain. I'm about to go to the gym. I'm about to go for a walk. But hey, that's what I'm working towards. I used to do it, or actually a good example, I used to have a picture of a dude with a six-pack on my phone, and people thought that was weird. I was like, why do you have a picture of a dude with a six-pack on your phone? I'm like, it's, I promise I love my wife. It's because like I see it constantly. I see it every day. It's right there in front of me. And it's just like, okay, it's like, it's right there. This is what I want. This thing that I'm about to eat. It's like, it's not aligned with, with what the body that's going to get me that. And it's like the little disciplines. Relying on motivation is tough and that kind of a thing. I would say it goes down to disciplines repeated that then turn into habits that then start to become it becomes a process. It becomes a way of thinking for you.
So yeah, I like what you said. I feel like basically to be successful, to get where you want to go, it's not emotional. It's so having your mind right? You're not acting on emotion every day. If you wake up and acting on emotion, hey, I don't want to do this because I don't feel like it.
Absolutely, right? You're screwed if you go off emotion.
Yeah, so it's more having your mind in check. Like, hey, stop. Don't do what you feel. Do what you need to do. Right.
Yep.
So that's how it sounds. Yeah.
Yeah, and make it manageable. Make it manageable, because it will get overwhelming. Like doing something, it's like it gets overwhelming, and it's just like, man, we've been contacting people, we've been reaching out, and it's just like, all right, I always have to stop myself. It's like we didn't get a certain amount of responses this week, or we sent out 1,000 emails, we got like 10 responses, or and it's just like it gets frustrating. You start to like step back, and you start to kind of like your hands want to drop. You get overwhelmed, and so that's why it has to be those manageable. Like, what can I do today? All right, just focus on. I'm going to send 30 emails today. That's it. I'm not going to think about anything else. I don't care what the result is. I'm going to disattach myself from the end result, from the end product. I'm just going to do that task, and then I'll worry about the results later. And that really helps you disassociate from that need to feel motivated.
Is that why you wrote books? So after the speech, people, to keep people motivated, you wrote books, because your books are very motivational.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's part of it's that business. You always want to, because when people hear you, it helps. Like the books help me market my speaking, and the speaking helps me market the book. So it is part of that. It's a great marketing tool as well. It's like it also establishes you a little bit. Not always, but it's like If you're an author, it helps you like, okay, this guy has some credibility, that kind of a thing. So it really helped me at the beginning. Now it's like my speaking does my talking for me. You could say it that way. But at the beginning, when I was like, because I didn't have a name, I wasn't like an ex-athlete or some movie star. It's like, how do you break into the speaking industry? Because usually as a motivational speaker, you're either like some super highly successful, businessman or some CEO, or you've done something big. And now you're speaking, or you're a previous athlete or whatever it is. And so for me, that was I had none of that. And I'm like, how do I start? How do I separate? What's my kind of competitive advantage, unique perspective and it was like writing. So I got into it. I was like, I can write. If I can write a book that people love, like that's it. That's the validation that I have. And so that's what helped me in that business. Yeah.
Wow. How many speeches have you done so far?
Oh gosh, I have a list somewhere. I keep track of everything. Yeah, I like
approximately. What do you think? Like 150, 25? Just
I would say between 150. I would say probably like 60. I'd say probably like 60. Not all of them paid. Yeah, not all of them paid, but a lot of them that were big, that had big opportunities. Because especially if you're breaking into the industry, you have to be able to do some stuff that's for free, because it helps establish, helps build connections, that kind of a thing. So, yeah.
Do you feel like people want to be motivated?
Yeah, man, people need it. Yeah, well, even if they think they don't, I'm sure there's a lot of self-motivated individuals. They don't need external motivation. They don't need a motivational speaker. They don't need a book. Like some people just have it. Some people just have that dream. They have their thing. They're pushing. They don't need. But there's a lot of people that are just always playing small. There's a lot of people that are always just like they're more reliant on that external validation. They're more reliant on someone to give them that push, someone to kind of tell them, to give them permission. I grew up in a big family, like we talked about at the beginning. Like I'm blessed. We're very close. My dad was always pushing us, like, think for yourself, think outside the box. What's your competitive advantage? What do you have that somebody else doesn't have? Whether that's in business, that's in work. And so my dad was always pushing us. My brothers are always pushing. My brother's always trying to do something. And so we kind of have this incubator of like positivity, but so many people don't have that. So many people don't have even that one person in their life that will tell them like, hey, go do it. Like you can do it. And it's so unfortunate. I read this recently that it's like, I want to say it was Jordan Peterson that actually said this, but he said something like, you would be surprised with how little encouragement people need to actually keep going, and yet how rare it is that they actually get that. And that's like one of the saddest things ever, because it's just like, man, something that I've been blessed with all of my life. There's people that live that will never have that if I'm not the one who says something. Yeah. And so for me, like when I'm getting nervous stepping on stage, I'm going to speak somewhere, I'm feeling a little bit, like maybe unqualified to be there. I always think about that. I'm like, there's people in this audience that I might be the only person that will ever give them permission to go and do that thing that they want to do. And so I think about that, and that keeps me going, and it calms me down. And I'm like, this is why I do what I do. This is why I'm here.
Absolutely. And what gives you, the thing is, I feel like what gives you also credibility to really go out there and to speak to millions and thousands of people out there is that you are a successful writer as well. You're not just out there doing speeches like, hey, speaking engagements. You are a successful author, and that's incredible. And that gives you validation on, hey, I'm not just talking about it. I'm actually going out there, and I'm successful in that way. So that's pretty powerful, man.
Yeah, because it's a process. Putting a book together, right? A lot of people have a dream of writing a book, and it's like, it is a process. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of dedication. There's ups and downs. There's the fear of putting yourself out there. There's the fear of what my friends and family are going to think of me. And so there's a lot of that. And so, me, like I have to practice what I preach all the time, because, it's like, I'm telling you guys, here's what people do. Here's what I do. And then I have to go, follow it through. And it's like, I'm speaking, but there's always still another level. There's always still stages that I want to be on, companies that I want to speak to, environments that I want to put myself in that are still scary for me. And even though I've done some engagements and I've done, and I've been successful in some of these areas, there's a lot more that I want to do. And so every time I catch myself like, oh man, this is the next thing. Now like, I'm like, hey, this is just an opportunity for me to practice what I preach, practice what I
Yeah.
what I claim to help people with. And so it's awesome. It keeps
That's
me going.
powerful. Hey, that's powerful, man. I mean,
Yeah.
you'll get there. I mean, you have. I feel like you have patience, and you're also persistent. So patience and persistence will get you anywhere. And I mean, the way
Absolutely,
you,
man. Yeah. Patience is a big thing because a lot of people compromise on their
yeah,
dream. They run out of patience. I know people personally that set out to achieve something, had a certain mission statement, and because it didn't work out as quick for them, they compromised and they completely changed who they are. They change, and I'm like, man, you needed to hold on a little bit longer, but you completely changed even your mission. But you claimed you were standing on these principles, and now you're a completely different person because you weren't patient enough. You didn't hold out. It didn't work out. You didn't get that overnight success, and you moved on. It's so unfortunate to see, but I always tell people the other word that you said, persistence, man. That's one of my best principles. I speak on that, and it's like I feel like that's my best quality is persistence. I'm not the most talented. I'm not the most qualified. I'm not the best storyteller. I'm not the best speaker out there by far, but I just refuse to go away. So that's that's my advantage. Like I'm never gonna go away.
that's awesome. Yeah, and when I mentioned earlier, do people want to be motivated? I feel like in the world, I don't know if you agree with this. In the world of AI, people are becoming a lot more lazy.
Yeah.
Instead of, let's say, I am, I can go to what's the open AI right now,
Mm-hmm.
and I can say, I can write, let's say, write an essay,
Yeah.
and I can give that to AI, and I can say, hey, make this, at this college level, write this
Yeah.
in a college level, and it will.
Mm.
So I feel like people less and less are thinking for themselves. Do you feel
Yeah.
like that will progress more and more and more, where people just kind of like, yeah, I had a dream, but I
Mm.
can what? Why do you have to get up in the morning if I can just stay home and
Yeah.
do this, and this work will be done for me? Do you feel
Mm-hmm.
like people are losing that ambition and dream?
Man, like it seems like it. It seems like it because there's a lot of distraction. Yeah, there's a lot of glued to our phones. There's a lot of that where, like you were saying, people don't think for themselves. People are just like, you know, their mind is just full of whatever they saw on social media all day scrolling. And that's why their minds are. A lot of people's minds are scattered. That's when they want to sit down to write or something, they can't because their mind
Yeah,
is. It's not their own thoughts. It's compiled of the thousand like jolting images and pictures and things and stimulating things that they saw throughout the day. So it's like it's hard to have your own thought. I think humans are resilient, man. I think we'll adjust to this, just because we have, through all existence of time. I think there will be, yeah. There's always the initial push. There's initial downfalls. There's the initial things that are going to happen and costs that people are going to have to, or prices that people are going to have to pay with the distraction, that kind of thing. But I think eventually we're going to come back to. I don't know what it is. I don't know the answers, but I think people are resilient. People always have that drive that, like, I mean, like, look at technology, look at the way the world, has like people. I
yeah,
think people are always going to want to. People are always dreaming. People are always, trying to progress. And I think that's what's going to save us. Is that yes, there is going to be the 90%, unfortunately, of people who just mail in the bag, like people who just have everything easy. With the click of a button, you got food delivered to you. With the click of a button, you got entertainment. Um, but I focus on the people that want to do something. I focus on the people that want to leave a legacy, that people want to do something with their lives. And I
yeah,
think if you really sit down with every individual, even the unmotivated ones, even the lazy ones, even the distracted ones, if you really dig down to the root, I think you can dig that out of people. And so, I mean, that's my mission. It's like I focus with my speaking in my books. It's like, I just focus on the people that are listening,
hmm
but I do hope that, yeah, if I just keep doing what I keep doing, that I touch that person that was dead, like I was sitting in that cubicle, and they somehow by accident stumble, their phone gets shut off, so they have to pick up a book or something for entertainment, and they read it, and it sparks. Like, man, there's just one more life saved, and yeah, that's what I'm focused on. But I do think people are resilient. I think people still find a way to express themselves in their own unique creativity and not let robots do all their thinking for them.
yeah. What's interesting to me is you definitely your personal legend, your mission in this life is definitely high up there. So I think if you set, like you did, you set something really high, I mean, changing people's lives, that's huge.
Mhm.
When you have that mission, you're pretty motivated at that time. You're like, man, if this is what I want to do, if this is what I want to help people so much, I mean, I imagine you're probably really motivated and get up every day and let's do this.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. Yeah. And it's not always, I'll be 100% honest with you, Andy. It's not even always as virtuous as it seems. Like I do, I want to leave an impact. I want to leave a legacy. I want people to attribute their life change to me, because that it gives me that's better than any form of payment you get. It's like knowing that you impacted somebody's life. But at the same time, I have a lot of personal dreams. There's a lot of things that I want to do. Like I want to go get my pilot's license this summer.
Wow.
There's places I want to visit with my wife. There's things that I want to do with our family. So I have a lot of personal motivation as well that keeps me pushing. That keeps me like, hey, let's get this thing going. Let's speak. Let's write. Let's get books out there. Let's impact people, but also at the same time, it helps me build my business. It helps me put myself out there, because there's a lot of things that I want to do as well. There's a lot of people in my life that need help. There's a lot of people in my life that I know are struggling. And so it's like, I want to hit certain goals for my own personal reasons. I want to hit certain goals because I want to help people around me in my direct circle of influence. And at the same time, if I can do that while impacting people out there who are quote unquote asleep, then that's the ultimate, the ultimate mission.
So I think I know your next book, by the way. It's going to be something about a pilot.
Maybe. If it goes through, man, well, I'll contribute that idea to you.
That's awesome. Yeah, man, Mountain of Olives. So that's your first book, bro. You blew me away with it. Honestly, I shared it with so many people. I was like, hey, you got to read this. Like, I think this needs to be like in churches. People need to read this. People who are like, don't want to read the Bible, or they're just like on the fence, they should read that, because it was impactful. It was really impactful, especially when you kind of, not going to give a lot away, but when you brought that in with kind of like what was happening in history. I thought it was like, for me, it was mind blowing. I was like, what? Hold on. What happened?
Yeah, I carefully led it to that, just to not to give it away. Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was powerful. And the book about talents, man, that was
fun. Yeah.
That's I feel like that's what you're kind of trying to do. You're trying to, you're trying people, like, convince people, hey, we all have opportunities. We all have, something to contribute to this world, and you're trying to, you're trying to help people get that out and bring it up to the world, huh?
Yeah. That's probably one of my favorite parables, the parable of the talents, man. It's so powerful. It's so, like, every time I read it, I'm like, man, I'm like re-inspired. It's almost like I see it in a different way. But it's like, it's like, even going back to what you were talking about in the world of AI and, robots replacing people's thinking and people's creativity. But at the same time, it's like, even if you have little, like, you have something. And that's the beautiful thing. It's like the servant that got the one talent, like, he got less than everyone else. And even for him, it was too much. He panicked. He went to the desert. He buried it because it was too much. He didn't have that. And that's how a lot of people live. It's like people who already have less, or they feel like they have less, they do what the servant did. They bury even what little they had. And it's like, you think the people that had the least should be the most scrappiest. Like, they should be fighting, because it's like, even if you have the one talent, like, you have a little bit to start. So, like, all right, how do I use what I have to, so that way next time I am entrusted with 2, and the next time I am entrusted with 5, and I do get more opportunities. But everyone wants opportunities. Everyone wants to do bigger things. Everyone wants to, have an impact. Everyone wants their life to have some sort of a meaning, leave some sort of a fingerprint on this world. And yet they won't even do what they can with what little they have. They won't even, they want to impact millions, but they won't impact the 5 friends that they have on Facebook right now. They're too afraid to put out a blog post. They're too afraid to put out a inspirational post, anything like that. It's like, how are you going to do more when you're too afraid to put yourself out with the 5 friends that you have on Facebook? So start with that. And then maybe you'll have some impact and influence, and you can progress a little bit. And it's just like, yeah, I don't care who you are, what you started with, like, you have something. If you spend some time and you dig around you have something to offer. You have a unique perspective, a unique story, a unique outlook, people in your life that you can impact that I would never have influence over because they don't know me. It's just like, you can start with something. And it's such a powerful parable. And yeah, it was a really fun book to write because I really wanted to, I wrote like a different ending to it, like a redemption story to that parable. But because I want people to know, it's like, it's like, as long as you have a heartbeat in you right now, then you can be like that servant. You can go back to that desert and you can dig that out. Like, if you're alive, you have time. You can go, no matter what you buried. Maybe it was a dream that you had when you were 16 years old and now you're 45 or you're 65. You have time to go back to that desert and pull that out. Look at the KFC guy.
Powerful.
I forgot his name, but at 65 or 70, he stole his mom's recipe, went and started selling it, and made the franchise. It's like, it's insane what people do. Is just, and people just need to realize that.
Yeah, that's powerful, man. I know that you believe in God, right? Absolutely. Do you feel like that's part of it? That's part of a huge part of what you do, because I've noticed a lot of motivational speakers, right, when they like try to change the world, like yourself, there is something, there's a higher power out there, that there's a greater purpose, and I feel like that's what drives people like yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I say to this, like, I don't. So when I go speak, when I'm hired to go speak at a corporate event, some sort of a city event, like I can't preach. That's not. I'm not going to get hired if I do that. That's not my job. That's not my position. But I use the parable of the talents in my speeches. I use different principles, and I always try to nudge people towards like, hey, there's something so much more to your life. Like, that's what, if I can get people to thinking about their life and how precious it is and how important it is, then on their own, I feel like they will find God. On their own, I feel like there's nothing else that you can. You can't value life if you think that after you die, you're just going to disappear into nothingness. I mean, it's like, I think about it that way. I'm like, man, if I was an atheist, I'm like, dude, I would be depressed. I'm like, I would have like, I don't know if I'd have motivation to do anything, because it's like, why would it matter? Like, who cares? Like, I'm going to disappear into nothingness. But because there's like that, people of faith, people who believe in that higher power, who believe in God, it's like, we know, it's like, dude, this time is valuable, it's precious, it's given to us, and we have it to impact people, and we can impact as many people as we can while we're here, and there's something so much more to that. So it's like, when I speak, my hope is always to like nudge people to just understand, or to start to think about their life and to think about the time they've been given, and I let God do the rest, and I just nudge them in that direction, because all this stuff is incredible. Personal development stuff is good. You got to take control of your habits. You got to take control of your discipline. You got to take control of your mind, what you watch, what you read, who you spend time with. These are all things that are directly in your control. But at the same time, there's something so much bigger that I can't give you just as a motivational speaker. There's something more that you can receive, and so it's like, that's the exciting part, is like, if I can nudge people in that direction, that's powerful.
That is powerful. That is powerful. Michael, I'm going to ask you the last question. If you die tomorrow, what would you like to be remembered for?
Oh, man, that's a good one. I want to be, I think I've kind of briefly mentioned it. I want people to attribute I want people to point at me and be like, that guy started the ripple effect in my life. Not as an ego thing, like, oh, so my name is known, but it's just like the way I talk about Augmendino, like the author that wrote the book. It's like, he started a ripple effect, and it affected me. And I hope that in the same way that through my writing, I impact somebody else, and that ripple effect keeps going. It's just like, anybody who's ever read my book can point back to Augmendino and say, like, that dude inspired this dude to do, and who knows how many people inspired Augmendino to become who he became. And so that's to me, is just like, I just hope to be one of those ripples in that pond, and to know, that, like, that, hey, my life had an impact here, that I left my fingerprint using my gifts, skills, and talents and abilities. But at the same time, my life was a reflection and a push constantly towards something bigger, for people to find their talents and their gifts, and live their life to the fullest and bring their talents to the world.
That's powerful. Thank you so much, Michael.
Absolutely. And it's been a pleasure, man.
This was a very insightful conversation. Actually, after we ended the recording, Michael and I continued to speak for the next 25 to 30 minutes. And I was like, should have not ended the recording. So he's a very insightful, smart man. And I've learned a lot from him. I appreciate you tuning in and watching this podcast. This was my first episode, so I do apologize if I made any mistakes or did not ask more in-depth questions. We're still, work in progress. We're all working to become better, and hopefully, over this next year, I'll become better and better at asking the right questions and making better podcasts. Thank you so much for watching.